Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for VideoCopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting After Effects tutorial. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be taking a look at this cool transition effect, and let's just take a look at some of the examples of what it can be used for. So first we have a wall of balls that come together, and pretty cool, 3D, all that good stuff. We have this one where somewhat of a transition with some optical flares at the end. So that's pretty cool. And you can see that the wipe happens from top to bottom. So that's important to understand, that you can transition this effect any way that you need. And here we have another one. This is like a star wipe. And if you know anything about making home videos, you need to have a star wipe for every transition, or at least a page peel, so that people know that we are moving on to the next shot. And finally, we have one more example here, similar to the wall, but just to point out that it can be used with pictures or logos, pretty much anything that you're working with. So first thing, we're going to take a look at this example here. So I have a title card, and this can be a logo, any kind of graphic or a photograph, and we're going to drop it into the new comp button. So we have our nice looking design. Our comp is 300 frames long, and just to double check, Control K, we are at 24 frames per second. So we'll hit OK. Come over to the effects and presets. We're going to type in CC Ball Action. It's already there, but I just did it for the sake of the tutorial, and we'll drag that out. And instantly we come up with a pretty cool effect. And I want to point this out too, that just using this effect on its own is pretty decent. Some cool settings here, like the size of the balls. We can set that down. I'll turn that up there, back up to full. And you know, you can create some interesting things, and it is pretty three-dimensional. So I could change this rotation setting. I could also twist it a bit. So right away, I mean, it's pretty interesting just on its own. There's also a scatter function that allows them to kind of spread out and do some interesting things. I saw somebody posted on the blog that they used it to create like a DNA strand, and so that's a cool idea. Just be careful that you don't use DNA from frogs when you are engineering them for dinosaurs, and if you want them all to be females, you want to be careful, because what can happen is that some frogs have the ability to change genders to, you know, reproduce. And so if you're trying to build some sort of park, you know, that represents the Jurassic period, you want to be careful that they aren't mating and turning into a problem with overpopulation. So remember, nature finds a way. By the way, that was all improv. I love that movie. The movie, obviously, we're talking about is Saving Private Ryan. Now, let's go and reset the ball action here. And we'll go down to 50% or 50 pixels on the ball size. So this is the size we're going to use. But if you change the grid spacing, you can do, you know, some different interesting things. So if they're really small, you know, it's a much more higher quality effect in terms of pixel resolution. But I like it to be a little bit more graphical anyway, and it also render faster, which is always good. So back to it. I'm going to reset it again, but that's it. No more getting sidetracked about movies and stuff. So the key to this effect is creating multiple layers of the same effect and then offsetting them in time. Now, there's some different tips that are going to make this easy, and hopefully it'll be reasonable for such a cool effect. Now, we have our first title background right here, and what we need to do is mask it out. So we'll come up here, we'll take the ellipse tool, and we'll zoom in here, and we want to just draw a mask around the very middle. So we'll just start on that one dot, or that one ball. And what we need to do is animate it. Now, here's the process. So it's not that complicated, but it is specific. So let's just kind of go through this really quick. We have it set right here on frame 0. So what we're going to do is animate the mask path. So we'll click on that, And as far as how many copies we want to work with, it's up to you. In this case, we're going to do 25. So if I come forward to frame 25, and because we start on frame 0, I'm going to go up 1 to frame 24, then what I'll do is animate the mask to grow out. So we'll double click on it, hold down Shift, Alt, Control, and that way it just scales from the center there, and we'll scale it until it reaches the outer bounds. So we'll hit enter, and so now we have a transition. Now what's cool about this effect is that the balls render after the mask is created. So we're not cutting off the balls that are close to the edge. They're going to stay the correct rendering. So that's kind of cool. Now what I need to do is create another mask. So I'll take the current mask, edit, duplicate, and then we're going to set this to subtract. Now we'll go into that mask property and bring the mask expansion in a bit. So probably 2 or 3 layers. The idea is to make sure that you get all of the animation in each frame. So it looks like that should cover it. But go ahead and play with that setting just to get it right. So now we've created, this animation. Now the ultimate goal is to make 25 copies of the layer that represent each slice of this mask animation. So here's how we're going to do that. First, let's pre-compose our animation. We'll hit pre-compose, and we'll leave all the attributes, and we'll just call this title and hit OK. So what we're going to do is hit U, move the current time indicator to the last keyframe, and then we're going to duplicate it 25 times. So you do Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. Once you have 5, then we could do Control D, 10, 15, 20, 25. So now we have 25 copies. And then we need to offset them 1 frame at a time. So if we take all of the layers, hold down Alt, and then begin bracket, what we're doing is just sliding it over so that the animation is only 1 frame long, and then Alt in bracket. So if we zoom in, we basically have a 1 frame long slice of each of these titles. And then we'll come up here to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and Sequence Layers. And because it's 1 frame long, they're going to be offset by 1 frame. So that's what it looks like. And just make sure that when you select the layers, you start at the bottom, hold down Shift, and then select the first layer, and that way they will sequence in order. Now what we need to do is at that same point in time, that first layer, let's go ahead, hit Alt, begin bracket, which will stretch the other layers over. So now if we look at our comp, we can see that it's completely filled in. But each one of these layers only represents a small slice of the entire animation. So that is kind of the idea. So what we need to do now, though, is disable the mask animation so that each layer only has 1 slice of that mask animation. So hopefully this is making sense, and if not, just rewind it. Hit M, and what that's going to do is bring up all of the masks, and you can see we have all this animation. We're going to simply get rid of it at that same point in time. So what we can do is click on the first stopwatch for the mask, and just click and drag down, and it will undo all of the mask properties, and hopefully I don't make a mistake in the middle of this. It'll be difficult to edit. Great, no problem. So now we've got rid of all of the masks animating, and we're in good shape. What do we need to do next? First, let's go ahead and extend the layers back to their full length. So we'll hit Control A to select all, and then Apple begin bracket, and then we can go to the end here and just extend it out a little bit. So now that we have it set up, this is where we can start being creative. So first thing we'll do is bring all of the layers back to frame 0. So again, we'll hit Control A and then hit Alt Home, and that will slide them all over. So what I want to do is go find one of them that takes place in the middle here and solo the layer. So what I want to do is create an animation and then apply it to all of the other layers. So we'll go ahead, start here. I probably want to make it about 30 frames long, and we'll keyframe the scatter amount, maybe the rotation, and even the ball size. So then if we move back in time to frame 0, we could turn the scatter amount up. We can shut off the show masks so we can see what's going on, and maybe add a little bit of twist. We might even change the axis, maybe the y-axis. That could be interesting. So it's up to you. You just want to play around with the settings. Now, we can set the ball size to 0, so they start really small and then come and create themselves. So if we take a look at the box animation, that's how I did it here, where you can have a bunch of little particles that grow into being the full-size particles. So that's one way, but in this case, we're actually going to turn the size up so that they're larger. Now, I also want to add a blur effect, so a fast blur, and even an exposure control from the color correction. So we'll hit U so we can see the animation. Just make sure our keyframes are set up. And we'll set the blurriness to maybe about 60. Hit U, brings those up. And we'll move forward to our 30 frame mark and turn the blur down to 0. And for the exposure, what I want to do is move 2 frames before the end, set a keyframe, then move forward, turn the exposure up 2 stops, and then go forward, 6 or 7 frames, and then set it down to 0. And that's going to create this effect where you see this highlight almost like a shock wave. And just kind of a good way to indicate that they have come together and that the image is ready to go. Like when, never mind. I'll talk about that later. So let's go ahead, add some easy ease keyframes here. So we'll select all of these values. We'll hit F9, and that way it'll be kind of smooth as it comes together. Let's see here. Okay. Looking good. Maybe we'll set the ball size to 75. And then we also want to fade it in so that they don't just pop on. So hit Shift T, which brings up our opacity. We'll set it down to 0. We'll move forward. Not the entire animation, but maybe just about half there. Go up to 100. You have to set a keyframe though, apparently. I was thinking about it and I wanted to, but it didn't happen. So there we go. Okay, so how do we get this effect to the rest of them? Well, we just have to copy and paste it. So make sure that all your layers are at frame 0. We'll move the current time indicator to frame 0. Then we'll hit UU, or we'll just hit E and then Shift T. So E brings up the effects, Shift, and then the letter T will bring up the opacity. And what we'll do is we'll select all of these and the opacity by holding down Shift, and then I can choose Edit, Copy. Now, what I want to do, and this is just a good idea, is select all of my layers and then choose Effect, Remove All. And that way we're not accidentally copying multiple copies of an effect or not moving all the parameters. Just a good idea. Now, the opacity will get overwritten, but if you want to, you can just hit T, and remove it and just make sure they're all set to 100. Now, this isn't a problem right now because we haven't added the effects to any of the other layers. But if you want to make a change, what you're going to need to do is change the one, copy the settings, and then paste it to the rest of them. So just so you understand that. Now, what we need to do is paste it right here. So Edit, Paste. And it's going to be slow, but look at this. We've created a monster. Now, in order to offset them by 1 frame, we need to go then make them all a single frame long and then sequence the layers like we did earlier and then re-extend them. Well, I got tired of that pretty quick, so we whipped up a quick little script that you guys can use for this effect. So what we'll do is we'll select the first layer, go down to the bottom, hold down Shift, select the last layer, and then choose File, Scripts, Run Script, and we can run the sequencer script. And when we hit Open, we get prompted with the ability to offset by however many frames. And it doesn't matter where the layers are, it'll just sequence them off by whatever you type in here. So we'll do by 1 frame, hit OK. And so now our animation starts in the middle there, starts to come together, and then we have our entire logo. Let's go ahead and extend our layers. So we'll move over, hit Control A, and then Alt in bracket to just extend the out points of the layers. And then we'll set the work area and I'll hit 0 so we can start previewing it. So right away we have a pretty cool looking effect. Now what I probably want to do is duplicate the top layer, and I'm going to take that copy, we'll change it to, I don't know, blue so that we know it's a different layer, and we'll just delete all of the effects. And maybe what we'll do is we'll add our own mask that animates. So let's see, we'll turn our masks back on, animate the path. We'll move forward, let's see. We're at frame 60, we'll move forward to frame 90. So we're going about the same speed. And hold down Control, Shift, Alt, and we're just gonna scale this up. Now I scaled it all the way up, but you can do less than that, and we can feather it out a lot and turn it back on. So then it's just a matter of lining it up with the animation so that as it grows on, it also fades to the correct image. But remember, this is 3D, so we can even add some more cool 3D effects. So I'll turn on the 3D layer switch, and I'll also take all of our layers other than the top one, hold down Shift, and let's set the transfer mode to add. And what that's going to do, besides adding a bunch of little random dots, because remember there's a little bit of overlap, it'll just make the particles blend a little bit more naturally together. So we get to the end here. I want to create a camera move. So we'll create a new camera. We'll do the 24mm preset, hit OK. And then we'll create a null object. And we'll make the null object 3D. And then we'll parent the camera to that null object. So towards the time when the animation is about complete, about here, we'll go to the null, hit R, keyframe the Y rotation, and then we'll move forward to the beginning, and we'll rotate it to the side, and then we can move that over. Maybe we'll do like 120 or so. We'll select that keyframe, we'll hit F9 so that it's nice and smooth. And for our camera, we'll hit P, keyframe the position, we'll move that over, hit F9 so it's smooth. And then when we go to the beginning, we'll take the camera track Z tool and let's move close in here. So then we start out really close to the particles and then we start backing away from them. Now I just remembered something. You see how the edges kind of fade off? That's because my blur effect, I suspect, didn't have the repeat edge pixels on. So just remember whenever you're making all these effects, just make sure you set all the settings right before you copy them. Unlike here, where I've clearly made a mistake, I've recorded it into my tutorial, and now will be the ridicule of the After Effects community. So, nevertheless, be careful. Just a message. All right, so I think this is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead, take a quick look with the entire animation. Very cool. Now, one thing you can do if you want to change the speed of the animation is just take the comp, put it into a new comp, and then choose, let's see, animation layer, time, enable time remapping, or time stretch even. It's good too. And set it to like, 200 or 250. And then the animation will just be a lot slower, but then you don't have to worry about playing with all the layers and offsetting and doing any of that crazy stuff. So just take a look at a little bit slower. That's very slow. We can also add like a nice glow that maybe fades away. We'll animate the intensity out. But maybe a nice glow, and then everything comes together. Now, here's another idea. I'm not sure how long this tutorial is, but I just want to throw out some more ideas there. So remember, we set the animation to be about 30 frames long. So if we open up the pre-comp, and let's say we go to frame 29, for example, and let's add an orange, like a gold solid. And we'll keyframe the opacity here. So we'll just basically fade it out. And let's try another transfer mode, maybe add or something. Let's instead of using that, we'll just do fill it with a color. Let's just try to find one that won't be too overpowering. So then it fades out at that point in time, and we can even make it fade out almost right when it gets to that point. What that's going to do is make the particles gold, and then when it comes together, you see it will actually be blue because all of the layers are offset, so is the animation of this color effect. I'm not sure that this looks good, but I think the idea is certainly interesting. And then just depending on how close we make this animation to the end of that animation, you can really offset it to create an interesting look. And the longer the transition is, the smoother it will fade in between the two colors. So if we were to stretch that out, it will fade a little bit longer. But those are just some different ideas. Now, the one thing to think about with the star example is that I probably still used about 25 layers, but the layers only went to the size of the star. So there's a lot more time for the star to get together. Okay, so that's pretty much the idea. Now, if we want to change the effect and maybe change the way it looks, what we can do is take all of our layers, Alt-Home, so they all go back to frame 1, and then we could just pick one of them, solo it, and change the effects. So let's get rid of the fast blur, and let's maybe do the thing where the balls start out small and then get larger, so that way they kind of just come together small and then that size. Now we can also change the size of the spacing, so we could do more like that. That might be interesting. But once we get it the way we want, we'll hit E and then Shift T so we can see the opacity. Then we'll go to the beginning, hold down Shift, edit, copy, and then we just need to select all of the layers, choose Effect, remove all, choose Edit, paste, and then let's make sure that we have them selected from 1 to 25. Then we'll choose that script, run script, sequencer, open, and we'll offset by 1 frame. We'll hit OK. So now, if we look at it, we'll unsolo that one. They all start coming together, and let's go and preview that. And to get rid of some of those specks that you see, we could just change the transfer mode of the layers just back to normal, and that way they're not blending with each other. So there you go. Now the reason it looks like they are here is because we're at half resolution on the render, but you can see that it's not like that in the final render. Anyway, so there you go. Pretty cool effect. Just think about all the combinations of things you could apply to that one layer and then copy it to the rest of them and see it kind of cascading on. So it's a lot of possibilities here, and the ball action filter is a fun one, and hopefully you guys have fun playing with it. Now, of course, be sure to check out the website. We've got lots of cool things happening. We've got the After Effects basic training. If you have coworkers or friends who want to get into After Effects, that's a great place to start. We've got our presets, the Sure Target plugin, as well as the reflection plugin, and just download the project file for those to get those. And we also have some cool tools that are very affordable. We have optical flares for adding some insane lens flares to your work. And of course, it helps support the site. So check out the blog and just stay active and keep learning. I am Andrew Kramer, and we'll see you next time.